Hi everyone, this is Blake Anderson, and in this video I'm going to walk you through how I use Final Cut Pro and Motion, which are two Apple products that can seamlessly work together so that you can sync title sequences between your projects. So I'm going to walk you through how you can quickly create motion title sequences so that you can access them in Final Cut Pro, and then you can also customize them. So you publish the features from Motion from a title sequence, and then you're also able to alter the coordinates and the different components of the title sequence. So I'm going to walk you through, why you might want to do this in your workflow, how if you set some of these sequences up in terms of creating these title sequences, first in Motion and then in Final Cut Pro, it can really smooth track and speed up your workflow. So if you do like this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks and have a great day. So in Motion, what I did is I have created a bunch of different title sequences that I sync with Final Cut Pro. And the way that I learned how to do this, originally I was just learning from YouTube and other tutorials online, but then recently I completed Apple's Motion Masterclass by Dylan Bates. And he has a great course on the topic of motion in Apple, and he walks you through all the different features and ways to create effects in Motion, and then also how to organize it in Final Cut Pro. A lot of my ways in which I use Motion I learned from that course, so I would highly recommend that if you're looking for something to get up and running with Motion and finding ways to sync it with Final Cut Pro. In this video, I'll cover some of the basics of how I use it in my workflow. A lot of what I typically do is I work in After Effects, but what I like Motion for is its ability to seamlessly work in Final Cut Pro, as I find Final Cut Pro much more intuitive and straightforward, whereas After Effects is often more involved and it involves, I think, many more features, but I think it's more advanced in a lot of ways than Motion is. If you're able to work in After Effects, understand the concept of layers and creating different keys and everything, then you're definitely going to be able to work in Motion and get up and running fairly quickly. In this video, the way that I design these title sequences in Motion is I got inspired by Palantir's design elements. They have some very futuristic and simplistic animations that I really like. That's kind of my inspiration behind why I created these title sequence. So here's an example of a title sequence story that I created in Motion. It's just a simple story format. The text comes in. I can turn off the layers here just to show you what it looks like. Show overlay, no guides. You get the concept. There's also this intro that I created, kind of like that Palantir look. It allows you to go animate it in and out. I have this outro, it's kind of similar. And so that basically animates like that. And so in order to create these kind of title sequence, what you do is when you open up Motion, you'll see the intro panel, the project panel that allows you to decide what kind of template you want to create. And so it's the project browser. For our purposes here, I'm just going to do Final Cut titles sequences. And I just kept it here with 1080p. So I'll go 1080p by 1920. You could do 4K as well. And there's also different presets here that you can select. I did 24 frames per second and a 10-second timeline. So that's how you create a simple story title sequence. I'm not going to walk through all the different features of Motion. I would suggest checking out Dylan's tutorial on his course. But the very basics is that there's a library, there's an inspector, and then there's the different layers, the timeline and the viewer. Up here you have your toolbar, and you can have different aspects as well. You can create behaviors and different effects. You can import. I won't go into depth too much, but the basic concept is layers that you have here. Once you get the hold of Motion, you can create more advanced projects such as this. It shows you the basics of what you can do in Motion. And the thing with motion is you could do more advanced motion design, but I found for my purposes, I just want some customization with my title sequences. This is why it's a great part of my workflow. I'm able to create customized templates that I can quickly edit in Final Cut Pro, publish from motion. I'm just going to show you the next step. Let's say you had a title sequence that animates in. I'll show you a couple of features. These are organized into groups, and you can organize your layers into groups. So I have the title sequence groups, and actually spelled title here wrong. So you're able to actually change the actual titles. So I call them hood titles. You're able to change the groups and all the different layers as well. I could have no background and just have the template, but I kind of like this design. It kind of animates in, and I'll show you what you can do with the different layers. And what I did, a very simple fade in, and that allows you to fade in the text and the logo. The key feature though is to learn how do you export this to Final Cut Pro. And so what you do is you go into File and Save As, and it will give you a template name. Let's say I'm going to do intro here. In terms of category, you can select a category. What I've done is I've created a star so that it's the first on the list in terms of the title sequence in Final Cut Pro. And so I have a section here, videography. Press publish. I've already published a similar one, so I won't do that here. But if you go into Final Cut Pro, you go into your title sequences here. You can see I have videography right here, right? And that's the way that you can publish, and then you just can drag this into your project. But the thing is, you see here, when you click on this, I only have the options to the build in, the build out of the title sequence, but I don't have all the other coordinates that I can kind of edit this text. You can click on the text here, but I want to have different options in my title sequence so that I can quickly edit them in Final Cut Pro. I don't have to keep going back and forth between Motion and Final Cut Pro. So in order to do that, go back into Motion, and let's just say that you have your title sequence already complete. You have organized your layers and you made them into a few groups. Then you want to publish it to Final Cut Pro. What I showed you is how to save it into a title sequence in Final Cut Pro. But the key here is to, if you want to edit some of those parameters in Final Cut Pro, you're going to have to publish each parameter in order to see the properties in Final Cut Pro. And so in order to do that, it takes a bit of time, to be honest, but what you do is, let's say you want the position, you publish that. Let's say you want the rotation, you publish that as well. These are the properties section. You publish that, and you could publish the scale, the anchor point, even the drops, shadow, the cropping. Let's say it's not just a title sequence, but you could also publish the logo here. You can do things like the color of the text. Let me show you how to do that. So you go into text here, and then so if you want to change the text in the, like I mentioned, the titles section in Final Cut Pro, you're going to publish it here so that you can edit the text. You can edit the font, so you publish all this. You can then see there's also appearance, where you find changing the color of the text. You can change the opacity and publish all that as well. And even the layout. Typically I'll do the format, the appearance, and the properties. Those are the three main sections. You go through each layer, the ones that you want to be able to edit in Final Cut Pro. You basically publish each thing within the properties, behaviors, and the text. And then within the text, there's the format, appearance, and layout. I typically stay at a format and appearance and just mostly publish this, and maybe if I want to drop shadow and that kind of thing. Once I've done that, you'll see in Final Cut Pro, now that I've added and published some of those aspects, it should show up here. Maybe it's because I was working with this one here. So yeah, you can see this is a finished one I've done, and I've published all the different features, and you can see I have the position, I have the different title aspects that can be edited. I'll go back to Motion. I'll show you that in the way to see what is actually published in your project, in your title sequence template. The way that you figure that out is you go into your project. So you go to the top of what your project's called, And once you click on the entirety of the project, you have the ability to go into the project settings in the publishing section. You can see all the different things that you've selected to be published. If you see anything missing, you'll find it here. And the key thing too is you can also organize how you want it to show up. The sequence of how you publish will show up in order here. This way you can organize it later and make sure you have it just the way you want it. So I've covered the basics of how I use motion in Final Cut Pro. There's different ways in which I can go more advanced into the program, but I covered the basics of how I use it in my workflow, and how, if you want to dive deeper, consider Dylan's course that I mentioned on the Mastery of Motion course. I would encourage you to look around, figure out which features you want to publish, and then simply save the template into the Final Cut title sequence. If you did like this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks and have a great day.